Hello. Welcome to a new video. And today I'm going to be reacting to some video game quotes that have been prepared on a list for me. I hope to give you some therapist insight, maybe even just some writer insight. And hell, maybe just me saying something will be worthwhile. Anyways, let's go ahead and get started. All right, number one from one of my favorite games that I've just played recently, from Eskie. I too am woo, but I'm also wee. So the wee balances the woo. It sounds ridiculous, I know, being read out, but I do love this quote very often because I think there's a bit of a misplaced idea that folks should be striving for complete happiness or like a flawless, infinite version of joy. And while that sounds great, we kind of need contrast for that joy to be meaningful, right? Even the pain in our lives has an effect of contrasting with the good, of giving meaning to what's good. Kind of case in point, imagine if you ate your favorite food for a month straight. That was the only thing you were allowed to eat. Now, what if it were 2 months, 6 months, a year, a lifetime? Listen, if you're the type who can be happy with that forever, more power to you. I know I'm definitely in the camp of that would be miserable. It would be fun for a bit, but I need to have some meals where I don't eat the very best thing that I like to actually make the thing that I do like mean anything. So, bit of a odd source of wisdom displaced from Eskie. Number two, another game I've played from God of War Ragnarok. So says Kratos, death can have me when it earns me. Now, I know this is kind of on its surface just an awesome, macho, I'm tough, come and get me kind of quote, but I see maybe a little bit more depth here. See, death can have me when it earns me. There's an amount of self-esteem, self-pride, self-worth in that I think is pretty damn cool. It's the idea that this is the life that Kratos has chosen to live. It's the life that we choose to live. And before it ends, he wants to go out on his own terms. Now, we don't really get to choose that, save for a couple situations, but in this case, it's more like, let's make sure when it does earn me, I've lived a life that has been worth taking. Okay, we got a new one here. One that I do not recognize. I didn't even play the original of this game. Memories, my boy. Just to show we put on inside our heads. From Helmut Fullbear. I hope that's said right. From Psychonauts 2. Okay, so. Memories and therapy. It's something we talk about a lot in my work with clients. Just because, yes, memories are just a show we put on inside our heads, but it's also literally, it's also what we draw upon to inform how we should feel, how we should react, how we should advance to a given situation in life. We're pattern learning creatures. We're very good at that. And memories form basically the idea of a pattern. That's good. Where it can be bad is essentially in something like PTSD, where the memories are literally traumatic and their resurgence speaks to, I don't want to say unresolved trauma, but pretty much unresolved trauma. The idea that there's still so much pain and so much devastation of one's identity from that trauma that moving on just isn't possible. So, do I agree with this quote? Yes, of course memories are just in our heads. But man, do they influence us in so many dramatic ways. And I don't think trying to dismiss them or downplay them is where I would encourage my clients to do. We work to reframe those memories, reframe trauma, This, I don't know. I'm sure it's a wonderful game. I'm sure this is a wonderful character. I don't like the dismissive nature of it. Half-Life 2, boy, I feel almost guilty as a gamer saying I have not played this game or the original, so this one's fresh to me. Said by G-Man, the right man in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world. I believe off the top of my head, G-Man is an antagonist, not a protagonist. So I wonder if he was saying this as a threat or an intimidation or something like that. But how I'll take it is the right man in the wrong place can make all the difference in the world. Interesting that he doesn't say positive or negative difference. And that is something that I try to help reframe with clients too. The idea that change, difference, impact, those don't have a monopoly on good or bad. In fact, they most certainly do not. They're mixed. So in this case, can make all the difference in the world? Yeah. Yeah, little things can change big things. God, that sounds so simple, but that's really what it's about. Now, as for the right man in the wrong place, I wonder if that speaks to one's perceived purpose in life, as if you have all the motivation in the world, but you're not directing it in the right place, the right direction. Um, I'm not sure. I would love in the comments if somebody could tell me kind of more in the context of this quote. I think it's a pretty cool one, and I think I'm kind of just scratching the surface of it, so I don't know. Tell me. Ah, okay. Another game series I have not engaged with. My wife loves these games. My kid loves these games. Yay. Animal Crossing. And I think this is from the original. Um, and remember that bad times are just times that are bad. This kind of goes back to that previous quote from Psychonauts 2, the idea that that word just is something that comes up in session a lot with clients. And I hear it most often in people who want to dismiss something about their own thoughts, emotions, experience. It's not, it's not, hmm, it's not like I got a promotion at work. It's I just got a promotion at work. It's a way to minimize just. Just this, just that. What's wrong with saying this and that? But in the context of this whole quote, that is a part of the trauma healing journey. Remember that bad times are just times that are bad. If we take the just out of it, it sounds even more simple and straightforward. And remember that bad times are times that are bad. Yeah, that does contextualize trauma within a specific time framework. The idea that trauma hurts us so badly is because it intrudes upon our daily life, even long after its actual exposure to us is gone. So remember that those bad times, the traumas, are just times that trauma happened. I know that sounds odd. I know that maybe sounds obvious. But when you have intrusive thoughts that just can't stay in their place, reminding yourself that they are just thoughts. There's that just. Is what's, I hope, this quote is advocating for. Ooh, very different one here. Okay. In a world without gold, we might have been heroes. Edward Blackbeard Teach. Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag. Haven't played this one. I feel like it's going to be a running theme. So, my immediate thought here, and I will say I am not an addictions counselor. I certainly work with people who have addictions, who experience addiction. That's not my primary focus. That is not where I go to. However, when I read this, I can think of nothing but addiction and almost a lament of it. In a world without, insert your addiction here. In a world without alcohol, in a world without cocaine, in a world without gambling, we might have been heroes. That tells me that if I were working with Blackbeard here, which is funny to think about, I would say he's on the right path to addressing an addictive issue. Because he's at least acknowledging the drawback of his addiction. In this case, let's call it gold. He's saying This held me back from being the hero I was supposed to be, or I think that I could have been. Now, that is still blaming the addiction and not taking on that kind of personal introspection. But if I had a client who was in the depths of addiction denial, the I don't have a problem, you have a problem voice. If they came to me with something like this, I would say, cool, one step has been made. There may be a hell of a lot more, but oh boy, you took a step. That's awesome. Ooh, no speaking one for this one. I'm assuming this is just a narrator, maybe? This action will have consequences. From Life is Strange. Boy, do I wish we could have that in our daily lives when we're faced with some kind of a choice. If there were a little dialogue option in our head that said, hey, whatever you're about to do, whichever route you pick, it's going to have consequences. Now, the extremes of this are very much clients that I have recognized. There's one type who essentially sees this, the action will have consequences, and ignores it. I don't care. I don't care what consequences there are. I will just do whatever it is I wish. I will silence this little voice. Off I go. It looks in real life like recklessness, like almost following one's inner whims too much. If you like Freud, it's basically when the id kind of takes over. I will say that happens. To me, that's not nearly as common as the opposite, where this action will have consequences. How do you live your life if you assume every action will have consequences? Like for me, if I choose to wake up at 7 or 7:30 in the morning, I don't really care what time it happens. I'll still be on time for whatever I have to be on time for. But there are some people who that choice, that action of what time to wake up at, they'll see it as having consequences. And because they see it as having consequences, turns out it does have consequences. Now, this is not the heart of, say, an anxiety disorder, but it is part of it, where we become so focused on what negative thing could happen in literally everything I do. So why do anything? It's a thought that comes up a lot in social anxiety disorder, which is a case where basically social gatherings are avoided because of a fear of being judged or being perceived negatively. That's very simple, but think about it. That means that this thought here, this action will have consequences, is at the forefront of somebody with social anxiety disorder's thoughts anytime they talk to another human. That's exhausting. I think I've gone way past the actual context of this quote because I'm sure it's just a literal like warning of, hey, pressing A or B will change something. But yeah, it's a way to contextualize anxiety. Pretty cool, I think. Okay, Edith Finch. What Remains of Edith Finch? Cool name. Never played it. If we lived forever, maybe we'd have time to understand things. Oh my goodness. I sometimes wish that were true. Not living forever. That doesn't sound awesome, but I hope I'm hearing almost an acceptance in this quote that no, we can't understand everything, or even most things, even some things. So I'm an existential therapist. That's kind of my framework that I work with clients with. What that means is addressing the given realities of human existence. Big, broad way of saying we're going to die. We're going to have anxiety. We're going to feel fear. We're going to have these negative parts that make us human. What do we do with them? This one hits on that right away. The idea of the death anxiety. And I believe this goes back mostly to Irvin Yalom, who's a wonderful writer, wonderful big figurehead in this field. Basically, the idea that we have a death anxiety, and it keeps us alive. But it also motivates us to do things before our time runs out. So to me, Edith here, and I'm going to go out on a big limb, knowing literally nothing about this game, I think Edith recognizes that the existential reality of death will limit what she can do in her life. And as dark as that sounds, there's so much acceptance that can be built on that. It's very much the goal of existential therapy, to understand how you see yourself in relation to those givens, like death, like anxiety, like stuff like that. So, all that to say, tell me if I'm wrong, but I would love to work with Edith Finch as a client. Another Kratos quote. Okay. This one's from God of War 2018. Ragnarok's one that comes after. It says, don't be sorry, be better. There's two ways to take this quote to me. The one way is what I would say was one of the most toxic parts of my upbringing as a kid. I'm sure this will resonate with a lot of people, but the idea of having high standards, having to be the best. If you're not the best, somebody's outworking you, therefore work harder. This is very much the kind of thing that I would hear in my home when I was in elementary school, middle school, high school. Don't be sorry. Don't dwell on the fact you messed up. Be better. You must be better. That can be motivating for a bit. It gets exhausting after a while because it encourages you to never be sorry. Or, in my case, to always be sorry because you can always be better. If the two options are be better or be sorry, and I can't be better, that gives me one option. Now, the more positive view on this is if you direct it internally at your own sense of self-esteem. For some folks, self-esteem, or the way I like to frame that, is the ability to absorb the challenges of life without losing yourself. People who don't have that skill could be motivated by this. The idea that being sorry necessarily acknowledges faults. That's a good thing, most of the time. When that's all you see, that's not great, especially for self-esteem, especially for viewing yourself as a being who can operate within this world. So, I'm hoping Kratos said this to Atreus, the kid version, the younger version, as a way of not dwelling on mistakes, and not as a way of, you must be better. Yeah. Okay, Undertale. The quote from the end of the game in the mirror. This game I like quite a bit. Despite everything, it's still you. I know a little bit about this because at the very start of the game, you see a mirror as well. And I believe it just says, it's you. Then at the end of the game, after all of the adventure you've been through, after all you've gone on, despite everything, it's still you. It, to me, speaks of the ship of Theseus metaphor, where if you have a ship and you take away a plank and replace it, how long until it's no longer the same ship? If you replace everything, is it the same ship? So the question here is, if you take a character at the very beginning of the game, and a character at the very end of the game, and they are dramatically different across all personality scopes, I'm not saying this would happen with Undertale, but hypothetically, is that character still you? And I think it's a pretty universal thing that folks would say, yeah, of course it is. Of course it's still you. And that's a wonderful thing to remember when we work with clients, is there's a lot of identity in who we are in a given moment, in a given year. Hell, before I transitioned, I was very proud of being a boy, kind of. I'll talk more about that. But the idea being that shaking out some of these bits of identity, the ones that don't fit, the ones that will be changing, the planks of the ship that we're taking out, the end result is still you. The end result is still you. Despite everything, it is still you. I love that one. And that'll do it for part one. Still more to come, more video game quotes, but wow, they kind of go deeper than I thought they would. I mean, I know video games are awesome, but Who'd have thought there's like therapy built into all of them? Alright, see you next time.